Okay, so cool. Let's already just go ahead with it then. So, going over like a little bit of an intro about yourself. Like, yeah, tell us
So,
about Kevin Lema.
so Kevin Lema, currently under 19s assistant head coach at Brentford Football Club, and then also a football consultant for an agency called Valenti, who represent a range of players from the Premier League all the way down to your Wham and Prems. And yeah, been coaching for 10 years. Played as well. Played for Fulham for their development centre as a youngster. Back into grassroots. Then went into Watford's college programme, and then managed to find an agent at the time, which then later on allowed me to be at Luton for 3 years. After Luton, I went and played for Uxbridge.
Okay,
Yeah,
you see with the college programs, because
yes.
I was part of one as well. I used to do one with it was with Tottenham at the time. Do you feel like there's a big difference now between the quality of players that come through? I feel like they tailor it a lot more to community rather than performance these days. I don't know if back then it was a lot more about bringing through like the next academy footballer or next pro footballer. What was that experience like?
I think at the time, back in the day, I feel like, so how can I put it? So when I used to do it, it's definitely about who can go into a pro club, recruiting the best crop of players from whatever team. So like, even when I went into Watford, half of the boys that I played with, so you're talking about your British Sombalonga, who's now probably one of the highest, he is the highest transferred player in the Championship. And he's now the captain of Middlesbrough. So he was in my
Mad, I
team.
didn't even know that.
Do you see
Oh,
what I mean?
wow.
So we used to play in the same team. But prior to that, we played in the Harrow Youth League. So I think he played for, along with many other players, there was like teams called Pinnacle. Pinnacle were probably one of the best teams around. They had players going in and out of Reading, Norwich. Then you had actual soccer. You had like Kadeem Harris, who now plays for Sheffield Wednesday, I think. Was at Cardiff. And then you had there's actual soccer, Pinnacle, St. Lawrence, I think that's the one that, or St. Andrews, one of the two that Brit and the rest of them used to play. These were like, and my team as well at the time was Actinian Whistlers. But then prior to that, I did play for Pinnacle Albion. But that crop, those 4 or 5 teams that I mentioned were literally had the best players. We're literally battling. It was like Premier League, literally. You don't know who's going to win the league. Over 4 or 5 years, you don't know who's winning the league. So can you imagine all of those players all coming together onto a program? So Watford were very smart. So they recruited people like my cousin, so my cousin Leslie, and a few other boys that knew us. So they recruited them in advance, sold the program to them, and then they sold it to us, and then that's how they recruited us. So in that, so back then it was about recruiting the best players, 100%. I think I've installed that now that we have to recruit the best players. It's not just about numbers, because it's all good and well looking at, oh, your team won the league this year, but come 2-3 years time, nobody's going to really remember that. However, if you have the best players in your program and they're going, look at me now, I'm talking about British Sombalonga coming over to our program 10 years ago. And people will remember that he went to Hartswood, but they won't remember if we won the league, because I can't remember if we won the league. See what I mean? See what I mean? So for me, I've installed that into our program now, and the guy that I work with, Ryan Peters, is also an ex-pro. He will back me on that. He said, look, it's all about, we've got to change that sort of college mentality to now more of an academy, and that generates the best players. And it's worked over the last year or two. It's definitely works for us, because we're now getting some good players like even in the last week or so, we've had players, I think it's been about 6 or 7 players that have gone into the league clubs. And are actually starting. These are 16, 17-year-olds. So
I actually wanted to touch on that a little bit as well, because especially now, I think there's a big, and it's been like this for a while, where a lot of young players, they don't necessarily see the potential of non-league football. For them, it's either Premier League or nothing. And I think me being involved in non-league for a number of years now, I kind of see that there's a really niche market for these young players to come through.
There is.
And I think that's what college programs need to start facilitating their players towards, because it's like it's very difficult to get a player from. We all know that it's very difficult to get a college player to the Premier League. If he's going to be a Premier League player, he's not going to be in a college team. Do you know what I mean? And I think the next best thing is to look down that semi-pro non-league route. I think for me that is something so key. But what I've kind of seen over the years, and I won't say the name of the college that I went to, but what I see now, the quality of players that I used to train with about 4 or 5 years ago, like even in my 2 years at college, I saw the quality decrease every year. Like every pre-season, the first touches are a lot heavier. People are missing more shots. Passes are going more wayward. But in my first pre-season there, everything was sharp. And it's like my college didn't really care too much about performance anymore because they knew that they were getting money for students. But I think, that's colleges... Go on. What was you going to say?
Yeah, no, it's true. No, I agree, because like that's what I'm saying. With colleges, there's certain clubs. So I say more than non-league clubs are more about quantity over quality, because some of the money that they get per student feeds into their first team.
That's what I was going to touch on. Yeah, the money. Yeah, I've heard some crazy figures. But I'm talking like 5 digits per student. I guess it kind of makes sense when you look at it. I think when you look at it from a business end, more students equals more money, and I completely get that. But I think there's nothing wrong with a lack of balance. Do you know what I mean?
And as well as that, sometimes like they kind of, and the non-league clubs have a little advantage, and the little advantage is that they can offer they can say your player, if you come to our program, you're going into the first team if you're doing well. Do you see what I mean? So kids look at that and like, ooh, if I go to, I'm not going to name our club because we obviously provide that sort of platform to players.
But another
club nearby that will be like other professional clubs programs will be like, come to us and you'll get straight to our under 23s. But that isn't the case. Do you see what I mean? So that's why some non-leagues edge it a little bit more than some of the professional clubs programs.
I think over the years I've preferred more like a non-league club college program set up, because it's so, for me, for as a player, if I was to be like a 16, 17-year-old again, that's something that I'd love, knowing that they're like the first team or the reserve team even is literally within touching distance. Like I don't need to be playing in a 60,000 capacity stadium. I don't need to put pressure on myself to go and play there within the next few years. I can literally just go.
9 times out of 10, like, so you're getting players now that are going to some of these National League ones, and some of these boys are getting contracts with their National League teams. And even if you go a little bit lower, some of the ones that are running programs, if they're running it properly, so number one, they've got to definitely be running it properly, and number two, there needs to be that relationship between the man that's running the program and the first team. If there isn't, then there's no chance of these boys going.
There's no link.
But you're getting a lot of successes now, because managers are now, or academy directors, you can call them, are trying to build that relationship with the first team and get players to get another cohort in of quality play.
I definitely agree, and I think it's so much better than like that. And I think now that we're, of course, this topic is going to be very football related, but going into, now that we're talking about players and football, where did your passion for football come from?
It actually came from my dad, funny enough.
Okay.
So my dad played a bit as well. I think when he came over to England, he had a little spell with Crystal Palace. He had a little trial. So he come from, I think they came over from Switzerland. I wasn't even born at the time. So I just remember, because even not too long ago, we was all sitting down and having a conversation about certain things, which were quite funny to hear, how my mum and dad were like Bonnie and Clyde. Which is crazy.
Mad.
Literally. But then it's also like, it literally came from my dad. I remember there's just that one memory that he took me to a local park, like where I used to live in Rainers Lane. And I remember him making me do kick-ups. He was like doing all sorts. I remember I was dribbling as well. I ended up stepping on dog poo as well. I remember that time. But that's where it literally come from. And then from then, I was looking at any sort of football opportunities. And luckily, there was one on my doorstep. So in Rangers Lane, we used to have a place called it used to be called the Pink and White, which is on Drinkwater Road, and that no longer exists, unfortunately, because of new flats. But there was also a concrete pitch where Rangers Lane Football Club are now based. So they've actually made a new one, but there used to be one that was a lot bigger. You're talking about at least 30, 40 boys there every Saturday playing football.
Mad.
Anybody from Rangers Lane, if anybody sees this interview and lived in Rangers Lane, it's probably like a 90s baby, or maybe a little bit a late 80s, they would know about the concrete pitch in Rangers Lane. So
mad. So you as a footballer, where were you playing positionally?
Boy, if I'm gonna, do you know what I'm gonna say? I started off as a goalkeeper.
No way.
I started off as a goalkeeper, and the craziest thing is that one time that I started as a goalkeeper, I never played that position again. Because I remember, and the thing about it is I just went to the club. I think it was, like I said, it was off the back of my dad training me. Then I think my mum and my dad found me a club, which is obviously Pinner Albion at the time. And then Pinner Albion was then, so I went to the training session and I wasn't the greatest then. I wasn't like, you know, some kids now, 7 to 8 years old, between 7 to 10 are like technically gifted. I wasn't. I had to build myself up. But so I went in there. I don't think the man was like, oh yeah, let's try him somewhere else. I give him credit. He didn't just say, he didn't just bin me off. He kind of gave me an opportunity. And that's what most coaches like to do now, where they give players, like, they give them, it's not just, especially foundation phase, they don't just tell players, oh, you're going to be a striker. They allow you to really test yourself in different positions. So I thank him for that. He wasn't the greatest of coaches, but I thank him for giving me all these little foundations, which I now implement into, if I am coaching a foundation phase team. So started off as a goalkeeper. I got lobbed by a girl.
And I can imagine at the time, getting lobbed by a girl is...
and
it
is. And I had to reevaluate what position I wanted to play. And then after that, it was, and the thing about it is, it wasn't even that she lobbed me once. I think it was like a good 2-3 times, you know.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And
what's going on with your positioning, man?
Boy, I'm not trying to be a Steve Madanda, but I tried, innit?
Just wandering off your line. I'm not calling you old, but I'm pretty sure at your time you weren't playing with sweepers. It was
no chance.
So getting lobbed back then, I can imagine it's not he's a sweeper, you know. We get
no way.
You're meant to be between the sticks, for crying out loud.
Save it. Like, I don't even know what my kicking was like or nothing. Now I can hit a ball. Don't know if I can pick it, but Jesus, I don't even know what it was like back then. But yeah, nah. That was my sort of starting position as a player. Becoming a defender, the centre mid, then the centre back. Centre back was like, there was a kid that I used to play against from Pinnacle called David. I can't remember what his last name is, but he was a beast of a player. And then when I became a defender, so I went centre mid, then centre mid, then defender. Yeah, and that's when me and him were having those battles. But this is when I knew I was a striker, because I was a defender flip-flapping my strikers.
Ah, okay.
So
a ball player before his time.
Yeah, I was doing all sorts of Maradona turns, you name it, step overs. Like David, if he ever, I can't remember his last name, but if he remembers from when he used to play against a defender, I think he went to Norwich at the time, but I don't think he plays anymore. But if he was to ever see this, he would talk about the challenge, the battles that me and him used to have was superb. One of the best times of my life.
Them ones there.
Yeah.
I think the first time, I've only seen you play once.
Yeah.
That's when it was about 2 seasons ago at Cricklewood.
Yeah, man. Coming out of my retirement.
Yeah, I remember. I think at the time I thought you was a centre mid.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sharp first touch.
Yeah.
Looked to play simple, but you could see like if you get too near to him and he's on the ball, he will have a go at passing you.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't remember having too many battles. I don't remember, but I do remember. I think we was on 2 different teams. But yeah, I do remember. Yeah, there was one session.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think after that, how comes you stopped training after that? Because I don't think I saw you after that.
It was just hard to commit. Like Saturdays as well. It's just like Saturdays. Like for example, my sister was just had a baby at the time as well. So
Right.
like, look, like you can imagine, and even like just going out and trying to get her stuff because even then she wasn't feeling too good. Mum's working, so it was just like, and then it's also like I wanted to come back and play, but my body was telling me, nah, chill. But
I hear it.
yeah, but it's even till now, like I still want to play because one thing I've always said is that I know that I'm a good player. Oh, here comes my niece. She's gone. She's fine. So yeah, one thing I've always said is I at least want to give it one more go. I'm 27 still. Like I don't turn
still,
28.
you've got time.
That's what I'm saying. So,
I know time flies, but you've got time.
At least another 10
you know
years. At least another 8 years or so if I look after my body. But it's like there's something in me that tells me. That's why I thought, you know what, I want to come back and play because at least when God blesses me with kids, I could say, you know what, I gave up for a while. I never lost my passion for the game, and I gave it a second chance. Because that's a life lesson, and that's an advice that you want to give to, like I said, something that we'll talk about later on. But my kids, that's something I want to tell them is to never give up.
Yeah, I think that mentality is something that's so key. Like I've always said there's a big difference between those that were born in 1999 and those born in 2000. I feel like, see what you just said there in terms of like not necessarily letting go of a dream, but always having it in the back of your mind and that willingness to like stick to it and doing whatever it takes to get it. I don't really see that in the post 2000 babies.
Nah.
And it's like, even now, like say for example, when we coach, it's something that it's so hard. I wouldn't say it's uncoachable, but it's so hard to like instill in the mind of a player now. Where like even me, I was born 1999 in February, but it's like that's something for me. It feels quite natural. Like I didn't have to adopt that. No one necessarily told me about holding on to my dreams and having to work hard for them. Like it was just something that I had. But I look at someone that's, or if I'm 21 now, someone that's 20 or 19, it's like you haven't got that. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Where do you think it's gone wrong with that, or where do you think, mate, if we don't want to say gone wrong, where do you think the difference has come from?
I think, and it's something that me, my friends, and a lot of people, especially coaches as well, like because our references are always when we used to play or when we used to train, it was never like this. I think as we were growing up, it was never always, it wasn't given to us. We always had to work hard for it. And I feel like, do you see what I mean? There's things like social media and stuff. Social media wasn't around then. We used to do MSN. Like there wasn't this whole thing about taking pictures and selfies. Like think about it. When we used to have our phones, we never had front cameras like this. We won't even be able to talk like this right now. But
straight back camera. If you wanted to take a selfie, you had to like flip the phone backwards, and you had to look at it and go, "Is it all right now? We got to do it again."
Exactly. You have at least 10 pics before you even have a good one. But like now, you could take one pic, you're all right.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
But again, it's like it's always. I feel sorry for them because I feel like they need to have the mentality that we have, which is we're go-getters. We've always been go-getters, and we've never had it easier. And I think there's always a high percentage, like 95% of the time, people that are born in our era are go-getters. They're hustlers. They don't wait around for stuff. Whereas the younger generation, it feels like they feel entitled to everything. They want everything.
Yes, no, 100%, 100%. And I think, especially with being entitled, I think that's definitely something that we should definitely touch on later on in this talk. But I think if we go back to you now and we talk about that transition between like football as a player and now going into more like the other careers within football, where did that sort of begin? Like, but I'm talking before your first ever interview into a footballing role. I'm talking about like the thought of going, do you know what? I don't really, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really want to play anymore, whatever for whatever reason that may be. But I definitely want to pursue a career within the industry elsewhere. Where did that kick off?
It was a nice little walk from Rayners Lane Estate with my mum. And there used to be a man that lived behind us, my neighbour. I never used to like him. Never. Asian guy. God bless him if he's still alive. But I never used to like him. Him and his partner, I don't know, they were just always angry. And it's like they never liked us kids playing around. So there was a time I was walking, and I think, because I had, in between my sort of grassroots, like I said, I had those like little battles against this David guy and all these other teams that we used to play against. So I feel like at the time, Harrow Youth League was one of the most attractive leagues ever. So we had players going in and out of trial. So I was attracting a lot of interest from clubs as well at the time. So I had like Arsenal coming in, Fulham at the time when I just finished their development centre, coming back for me again, all sorts of clubs. So as you can imagine, news travels so quickly in the estate, and even the older generation will hear it. So we're walking, me and my mum, and somehow he was like near us. He was taking a walk as well. I think he was going South Harrow. So he was just talking to me about what are you doing? What are you thinking about? And that's when he actually told me, and God bless him for this, he actually said to me, always have a plan B. It's a generic advice that everybody gives.
Of course,
but I got given at such an early age, and it always stuck with me. And there was one thing that I remember from that day on, I always thought about, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And it's crazy because every person that I speak to, they're like, you know what? You're the only person that's actually said what you wanted to do, and you've actually carried it all the way through. So I always said to myself, because he told me also that football is he told me very specifically, football is not a long-term career. You need to find something else. So I always said I wanted to have either a football business, become a football coach, or be a football agent. But the football agent wasn't a thing where I said I wanted to be a football agent. But I always said that if it's not coaching, it has to be something important within the sport that I love. And that's where it came from. Literally, from this man.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I think with that last bit that you said in terms of I have to stay within the industry, it's the same thing with me. Like my journey was a little bit different. I came into football really late. I came into football at 16. Before all of that, it was athletics, trampolining, weightlifting, table tennis. I was like a jack of all trades when it came to like just being physical. I think there was the interest only really grew at 16. And it was like, of course, by the time I was 18, I already knew I'm not going to make it. Like, of course, I'd love to still play, Saturday football, wherever I can. I think I knew I had the mentality and the physique for it. And it was just about building the game understanding thereon. But I think when it came to what is going to pay at the time, say, for example, like my phone bill or like the Wi-Fi bill, like it's the same thing. Like I've got to stay within the industry. And for me, I was a little bit more reckless with it. Is like, I don't care. I don't care if I'm the kit man, if I'm the physio, if like cool, like if I can coach, cool, like that's cool. But as long as I'm in an environment where someone within 5-10 yards next to me is kicking a football, I'm there. Do you know what I mean? And I think, but yeah, so that's where it kind of happened for you. So then when did you start looking for those outside of the playing role? Where did that start to kick off?
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like, I don't know whether it was like you're being told by God or whoever that your career might come to an end very, very quickly. But I don't see it that way because I had like a little injury scare, but we'll go into that anyway because mentally it brought me down and that's what stopped me from playing. But prior to that, it was literally like you have your career days at school and even back in the day, which is, again, it's a difference between what we used to get in college programs to what players get now. So we had your level 1 and your level 2 was paid for by the clubs. So they offer that to you. So I think from then on, I think it was when my tutor for my first year as a level 1, when the tutor said to me that you can get paid from coaching, I was onto it because that is something that I thought about back in the day. And on top of that, it's nice because I used to get my EMA as well. But if I can get an extra little £10 a week or 10, whatever it is, £10 an hour, I think I started for like £7.50. Even that little £7.50, if I can see that a nice little £300-400 back in the day, you're balling.
Yeah.
Like,
100%. Yeah.
You see what I mean? But it was, yeah, man, that was like literally when the man said, "Oh, you can get paid from this," for me, it was a win-win. So I went straight away. And at the time as well, I think I just moved from Rainers Lane to Norfolk. So I used to do Watford Kicks as well at the time. So I used to do like the little indoor thing. But when I moved over, I found the local little community thing, which was Brentford. And then that's where I kind of like, I was playing, obviously, even though I was a scholar at the time, but I was still coming back to play with the guys in the estate because it was just fun. Like, you just want to enjoy and play.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like, it's sometimes things that like in academy football where it's too restricted. Like you're being coached a certain way. You're not playing with freedom. So me coming back every Tuesdays and Thursdays, again, number one was to get paid for coaching and get my experience up. But then it was also to enjoy my football when I'm not being restricted, not being told this is the way I want you to play. Just playing with that freedom. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So like where was you? I can't remember if you said it within this, but your first club that you coached at, if you want to say it, where was that?
I'm still at the same club now, Brentford.
Okay.
Been there
And
10
it's
years.
funny that you say you came down to Norfolk because I remember I think it was in Greenford. I think it was Greenford High. When I was younger, they used to do like a Brentford program. It was literally like on concrete. And I remember I used to go to that. I think it was on a Tuesday and Thursday. It used to finish at like 7:30. It was like 6 till 7.
It might have been a guy called, because there used to be, I've always been at Norfolk. Norfolk has always been my bread and butter.
Yeah.
And as much as sometimes you might want to leave a job and go elsewhere, I have done a few times where I had to leave that specific centre to go and focus on my football when I was playing non-league. Remember, it clashes with Tuesdays and Thursdays is where every non-league team.
That's where they train, innit? Yeah.
So I had to kind of sacrifice that, but it was all right because the money that I would make from football at the time kind of replaced that. So I didn't feel like I was losing too much. But it goes back to something that we'll touch upon later, whereas the passion for the young people kind of said, you know what, I'm not doing so well at football now. I need to step back and do something else. But yeah, no, I've been at Brentford ever since. Like I've been done a few non-league clubs here and there, but Brentford's always been my first club, and I've been there for since. It's 10 years this year. 10 years this month. Yeah, October.
So you were there from 17?
17. Literally volunteered for like 3 months. And I literally, it's like I had a vision for football or how I wanted this place to be.
Yeah.
Playing with freedom, I get it. I wanted to play with freedom, but it was also like, I thought that player developer side came up so quickly because instantly, as I went from being a volunteer in the space, they normally do volunteers for 3 months. Within a space of like a month, they started paying me, saying, what you're doing is phenomenal. I had guys older than me and I was coaching them.
Wow.
You know what I mean? But how I got away with it.
Levels were there from early, boy.
Yeah, literally. Player developing was there from early. Very, very early. And the thing about it is, what was motivating was the fact that I'm coaching these guys and they're older than me. And some are younger as well. Some are the same age. And I'm taking away the sessions that I'm doing at Luton and I'm bringing it into Brentford Kicks.
Yeah.
And like I said, the confidence boost and what made me so like, I realized that I'm actually doing something different is the numbers coming in. This is just a community session.
Yeah.
Norfolk used to have 3 7-a-side pitches. It's now turned to 4 7-a-side pitches. But used to go, the way it used to, literally like you get 1 line, 2 line, and it was probably one of the worst pitches ever. But
whereabouts in Norfolk was it?
Norfolk,
I'm quite familiar with Norfolk. Okay.
Literally.
Okay.
It was literally there, and then that one pitch was, you're talking about 40 guys coming down just to be coached.
Goodness gracious. How many footballs did you have at the time?
I can't remember. think it wasn't many. Like
can
now,
imagine.
it's a requirement. Like for me to have a good
Yeah.
session, for me to have a very, very good session, people like to throw, but if you're a good coach, you'll be able to do this. But really and truly, yeah, you can. You should be able to adapt with one or two, 2 or 3 footballs, but you can't do that if you got 20 odd players and you're trying to do a possession-based thing. That's not going to work, because if one ball goes out and the tempo is so high, you're trying to tell me you want the kid to sprint 15 yards, 10 yards to then come back and continue with that tempo. No. You need to have a pile of footballs there. So once that goes out, you just punch the next one in.
Yeah,
But,
no, I agree.
yeah, man.
I agree. I think back then was like, you see how the FA talk about 70% ball rolling time. Was that like a requirement back then, or was the percentage just lower, or was it not even existing at the time?
I don't think it existed. I think those things have now been implemented through the bad habits of coaches. You see what I mean?
Okay.
There's been so many bad habits of coaches making players run around for so long, 10 laps and all this sort of thing, and how you developing a player, are you developing this, that whole versus, it's all that athlete versus footballer, like sort of debate. Are you developing an athlete or are you developing a footballer? So I feel like, yeah, back then you had that mixture. People will run, do fitness, people do ball, like all sorts of football. But
Yeah.
now it's a priority.
So then talk to me about how did the evolution of you as a coach and of you within a football context, what did that look like going on like year by year?
First year coaching?
So let's say, for example, if we were discussing the first year now, what did like the third, fourth and fifth year look like?
Very exciting. And the reason why it became so exciting, so for me, I was so keen to go out and learn. And then at the time as well, I was scouting for the Brentford Football Club. So I was able to go out and watch academy coaches. So for me, I was so keen to go out and watch, and I still am, but I was so keen to go out and watch other coaches and then bring that back to the community. You see what I mean? With community. And when they see that I'm delivering all these types of sessions, and again, it's not me just going there looking at the session, it's actually going there looking and getting a great understanding of what they're doing, asking the coaches questions in terms of why are you doing this, what is the purpose of it, you see what I mean, and how do you set it up, or how do you adapt it if you've got X, Y, Z, or if you've got a number of players. So when I found myself doing that and going back and doing it to the community, it just got exciting. And from then, I started now realizing I have players that I can go and play matches, that I got a squad of players, we can go play matches against these teams or invite teams over. I could send players to trials, because that's when I started to really bang on my networking. And that's what kind of the coaching side and the networking, once I got that literally in lock, it was a different story. It was so exciting.
Where did the networking start from?
Just literally, like, I don't think, like, back then I didn't know about LinkedIn. So it was literally through just like looking online, becoming a scout. People know who you are, bringing players in, and then you're just literally, if you're, for example, like you just never know who you're gonna meet. Sometimes there might be a player, because remember, like I said, my session is a community session. So any kids coming in, but you don't know what their parent does. Do you see what I mean? Their parent might be an agent. Their parent might be an academy coach somewhere. So you just never know. So like I said, during that time, because it was so exciting in terms of coaching and how I was developing players, it was like literally word of mouth, people going out and telling me what my session looked like. And then parents coming over to me, introducing me to somebody, me meeting people, like, cause even when I was scouting at Brentford, there was like, we had the biggest scouting network. I wouldn't be surprised if Alfred was a Brentford scout. Do you see what I mean? Like, I mean, serious. There was so many Brentford scouts, and then that way you kind of like, when everybody kind of went their own ways, you still kept in contact. And then for me, that's what I did. I just kept on taking people's numbers, like kept on staying in touch, providing trials if I could, if they were at the standard. And yeah, for me, that's when I realized, okay, through talking, through networking, you meet all these people, and it's just gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm so thankful that I'm in a position where I network or I talk to people like higher up in their clubs. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's honestly, that's amazing to hear. There's actually something I want to touch on but before we go into that, like going back in terms of talking about networking, like even if we take that out of a football setting, I want you to kind of answer this question, like how important is networking for, I wouldn't even just say a young person, for anyone?
It's the biggest thing. You'll be very, very, if you say networking is not important, then you're very, very naive or you're very narrow-minded, because how else are you meant to meet certain people? Like how else are you meant to talk about partnerships? The word partnership is basically like you linking up with somebody. So if you're networking, then how do you become a partner with somebody? Do you see what I mean? So for me, it's like, it's the most important thing to get you to where you need to, and to meet the people that you need to meet. You have to network, and it's as simple as that. There's no two ways about it. For me to get to where I am now, or I'm able to now pick up, or on my phone I can pick up the head of recruitment for a certain club or the director of football of a certain club. That's through network. You see what I mean? So it's and as well as that, it's also that respect that you get from them. You can't be networking with these people and talking nonsense. You gotta know your stuff.
You gotta have your levels,
100%.
You have to have your levels.
Because like I said, not every industry is rosy. I'm pretty sure that most of them not. But you gotta understand that you gotta know your stuff, and you gotta sort of stamp your authority with certain people, because you can get run over very, very quickly. And if you do, it kind of just goes down. And once that person says, that Kev guy, spoke to him, he doesn't really know his stuff, or he's a bit too soft with certain things, or whatever it may be, then you kind of lose your reputation that way. But if you know, like I used to, with my networking, I wasn't a pest, but I was very like, what's going on with my player? Like, what is the next opportunity? You know what I mean? You're not necessarily like in their face, but you're kind of like showing that, look, I'm bringing this player, and if you're not looking at him, I'm taking him elsewhere. Yeah.
It's kind of like a balanced sense of urgency, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I literally used to go to, I tell clubs this now as well. Like I say to them, look, if you're not going to look at this player, I'm taking him elsewhere. And again, it kind of keeps them on their toes as well. Because half the time they know if this player is not going, if it's coming from Kev, if we're not going to look at him, he's definitely going to send him elsewhere, and there's a very high chance that he'll get signed. So
I fully understand that one. But you know what is so crazy now? Like, we live in a world now where networking should be hands down the easiest thing to do. You've
100%.
got, I say a million, like literally, I'd even say, you've got a million different social platforms to literally speak to anyone you want. But then we see with young people, they've got the device, they've got all the social media platforms, but we don't really see the right conversation. There's conversation amongst young people, but it's never really something productive or something that will bring them forward into their career. Like, why do you, I don't know if you've ever thought about that before. I just wanted to kind of get into your head a little bit about that. Why do you think that is?
So why do you feel young people lack in terms of networking and stuff like that?
Yeah, or like, why do they lack the communication skills? Communication skills.
Yeah, it's because of the entitlement. It's definitely because of the entitlement. And the reason why I say that is because they feel like you should come to them and offer them what they want. They don't feel like they need to go and get it. Do you see what I mean? And that's why I tell young people. So it's like, I say this to a lot of young people, and I'm like to them, look, you can't just sit around and wait. Nobody's going to come and just offer you a contract, or nobody's just going to come and say, you know what, because you're sitting on the bench, you look like a good player, I'm going to sign you on a 3-year deal. So you got to go and get it, or you got to go and question the manager, like, what's going on? Or like, obviously some people you got to be a little bit careful for, because they're experienced managers or whatever it may be. But you got to be able to like go and say, look, this is what I want, or like communicate with them quite well enough to say, you know what, for the manager to respect you and be like, yeah, you know what, this kid, I'm gonna bring him in because of how he's communicating with me. He's come across very, very mature. He's come across or she's come across very, very mature that I highly respect him, and let's get him in. Some of these kids now, again, they feel entitled. They feel like you should give it to them, and that's not the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think articulation is the one thing that will save a young person in terms of having like those bad experiences
100%.
with managers or with any sort of head honcho in any environment. Because I even look at I kind of look at myself and I see where I am now. It wasn't because of what I'd done on the pitch. It wasn't because of a coaching session. It was because of probably how it started from the interview. Do you know what I mean? How I present myself, the words that I use. Of course, when it comes to interviews and stuff, we're looking at, like research of, the company or the football club that you're going into. But I think articulation and communication, those are the two things that definitely put me up, going up each level.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think now, even going back to you in terms of going up levels, and I can imagine that you as a black coach in what is a predominantly white environment, what was that like networking? Because I can already imagine what you're going to say, because I can imagine what a conversation between a white male and another white male could look like. What did it look like for you with a black male talking to what probably was a white male? Like, how did you overcome those barriers?
Do you know what? My first encounter as a coach with another ethnicity, or let's say a white coach, for example, was actually pretty good, if I'm honest. Because funny enough, he's the one that actually gave me my opportunity at Brentford to start off with. And then the guy that actually gave me the job was an Asian guy. So my communication with them was actually pretty good. There's certain people that you try your best with. So I tried to adapt. And I tried to, for me, try to get an understanding of what they like, what sort of things they're into, so we're able to relate to each other. Yeah. But there's certain people that it's just literally a no-go. They just don't have any sort of social life. They don't like socializing as much. So it is what it is, and you can't really do nothing about it. So long as you keep trying and you smile, you say good morning, and you say good night, have a great weekend, you're fine. That's it. That's fine. That's good enough for somebody. For some people, anyway. Saying nothing to them at all can be a bit hostile as well, because if you suss out that they're not really a social person, but yet you're trying to be like them as well, they might feel like, oh, like who do you think you are? But being a little bit nice to them can sometimes go a long way. And later on, they might even be, because some people, they're very closed, and then once they get to know you a bit more, they're a little bit open. But overall, there's been, like I said, there's been a few people that I found it a little bit difficult to communicate with and get a general understanding. They probably didn't have any sort of understanding of me. And the reason behind that is, and I'm sure a lot of coaches will say this, is because, and it goes by how police officers see it as well. So it's like, you get a certain coach that's not from London, but and he doesn't understand maybe the lingo of how we talk or how certain things, do you see what I mean? And it's the same for, like, even when I used to do a bit of teaching, it was the same. But that was like the teacher communicating with the young people. He found it very, very difficult. But for me, it was fun because I understood what the kids were about, and I'm from the area. But like I said, in general, it's been pretty good. But there's only a few people that you can communicate with.
What other struggles or hardships or barriers did you encounter, like going through that whole 10-year journey?
So do you know what it is? They always say sometimes you've got to adapt in terms of how you work and stuff. But for me, I'm always like, if you don't allow me to use my creativity, or you don't allow me to use my sort of resources or my net or my contacts and stuff, or whatever it may be, like, then you've lost me. Do you see what I mean? Allow me, give me a foundation, yes, but allow me to go and do the rest. Do you see what I mean? And there's certain managers or line managers or whatever that didn't allow me to do that. And that was my biggest problem. So we'll literally be battling back and forth because it's not, I'm now thinking that you're blocking my opportunities, because that's what the people will look at it. So like, if you're not allowing me to go and use what my skill sets and what I can bring to the table in order to complete a certain task or a certain deadline or whatever it may be, then we've got ourselves a problem. Do you see what I mean? And that for me was one of them. Just allow me to, like, my current manager, he says, Kev, I know if you do it your way, you'll get the work done. Do you see what I mean? And that's how it's been ever since.
Yeah. Like, especially on that last thing you said in terms of being able to do it your way, because you know that it can get done with quality. Like, how do you earn that right or that trust in someone that is higher than you, that actually trusts in your ability? Like, what was that like? What was that journey like?
It was tough because you got to convince them a lot of times. But if you're consistently performing, then they can't really say nothing. It's like going back on the football pitch. If you're consistently performing in training, surely you should be allowed to start on a Saturday afternoon or Wednesday afternoon. So for me, it's exactly the same. So if I was consistently producing the quality of work and they're asking who's producing this, it's obviously me, and my line manager can't hide that. Do you see what I mean? So for me, that was it was tough, don't get me wrong, because sometimes you're doing crazy amount of work. You're putting crazy amount of hours in and it's not appreciated, or they're telling you, oh, this doesn't look good, you got to change this, you got to change that. For me, I'm sure a lot of people have gone through that. But I kept on believing that what I'm doing or how I go about working will always be highlighted at some point. And then from that, I'll gain the respect of others. And if it's not directly my line manager or whoever it may be, I'm sure my peers will see that, and they'll probably, again, like, word travels and people will start to realize, you know what? Yeah, you got to let Kevin do it the way he does, or you got to let or Joe do however he wants, and hopefully that gets him to where he needs to be.
Yeah, because I know what that's like, where especially in like my earlier like months and years of coaching, where I was doing a little bit more higher up stuff with higher clubs, and it was like it was making those 2-hour journeys with minimal pay, and like having, you know, really small numbers one week and having massive numbers the next week, and like really just trying to do the best that you can do, but not really feeling like anyone really is appreciating what you're doing. It's like as long as Kevin's here and I've got someone booked in to do the session, as a line manager or whatever, I'm all right. And it's like, I think, especially in my first year of proper coaching, that was the most frustrating thing, because it's like I'm putting in all of this sacrifice, but the output is so small. But then at the same time, I'm a big believer that that's kind of part of the journey, where you have to be consistent, like through the muddy times. Do you know what I mean? To really see if you really want this, if this is really for you. Do you know what I mean? And I think even now when we look at like young people, and we go back, if we even go back now to talking about that go-getter mentality, like if, say for example, if I'm a young person, you're talking to a 16-year-old, 17-year-old right now, how would you pass the message across of being consistent and having that mentality of always going at it 100%?
So for me, and I can't say this will work for everybody else, and it goes back to me. It goes back to, again, the word networking. When I speak to certain players, I'm able to prove to them. I show them two samples or two examples of players that I've worked with that I've done very, very well, but haven't been consistent enough and have now dropped. And then again, I can show them examples of players that I talk to directly are now at the top of the game. Do you see what I mean? And sometimes, again, you're having so my sort of networking, again, is not just football. I have people outside of football as well. So I have cousins that are DJs, cousins that are presenters, friends that are doing all sorts of things. And the message is always the same. Do you see what I mean? They can show you different examples. But for me, again, because most of the young people that I come across are in football, are interested in becoming professional footballers, I use that to my advantage, like the players that I speak to. Sometimes you'll be like, some players will tell you, I'll ring up a certain pro right in front of them and say, here he is. And I'll ask him the question and he will answer it for them there and then. Or they will ask a few questions.
Yeah.
And that way they're kind of like, whoa, like he's actually got a pro talking to us right now. And that for them sits in their head for the rest of that. And the craziest thing is that idea actually came from someone that lives down the road from me. I'll probably, if you said this video, but shout out to Daniel Ivan, because he was one of my biggest, I call him my big brother, but he was one of my biggest influences in working hard and being consistent. Because he used to, throughout my Luton time, he used to push me. He would take me to the gym and push me. But then there was times where, when he would sit down and speak to me about certain things or how I think about, or he'd give me advice like you just asked. He would go and ring a pro right in front of me, and I'll be having that sort of conversation with the pro about certain things.
Mad.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, whatever I've been taught, I've kind of replicated it and showed it to other young people. So, you know what's crazy? In 10, 15 years' time, they'll probably do the same thing to the younger generation that are coming up.
Yeah. And there's almost like that sort of like generational wealth of not necessarily like money and monetary value, but that value of inspiration.
Exactly.
Or like testimonies or testimonials, whatever you want to call them. And I think, that in itself is so much more value before the money comes in, because it's like you have that gem that will one day unlock the money
exactly.
and the trophies and everything that comes with it. Now that's amazing. And I think to going back to, or sticking on the topic of young people, I'm pretty sure that someone or a young person watching this now is probably thinking, this Kevin guy is like, he's doing stuff, like he's really on a mad one, and I think, do you know what it is? We'd have to do like a part 2, because I know that there's so much more within that 10-year journey that 100%. that we haven't touched. So
for me, and it's crazy because, like you said earlier, I like to, and a lot of people will say that I'm very, very humble in a sense where I like to keep. I rather let people do their talking. I don't want to do it so much. You see what I mean? I'd rather leave it to them to do the talking, because, and it's nice sometimes to because later on, like when people come up to me like, oh, you're Kevin Lema, like it's crazy. Even was it 2 weeks ago? A guy, I'm trying to get a new car, and I rang up, and the guy said to me, he goes, he was just asking for my name, details, and all that. And he goes, I know who you are. I'm like, you know me? He goes, yeah, I know who you are. He was like, you coached my cousin about 5 years ago.
Mad.
He said, and he says he always mentioned about your session. Do you see what I mean?
Mental.
And the next day, he said, when you come in, I'll drop you. He said, whatever the price was for the car, I'll drop it very, very low for you because of what you've done for it.
Oh, mate. I know there's no crowd, but I have to. Oh, my goodness. Nah, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
But it's just
legacy.
That's what I'm saying. And the thing about it is, I don't go around boasting about this and the other. And people say, no, you got to be a little bit arrogant about it. But I'm like, do you know what? I'd rather keep it humble. And I said to him, there's some people out there, some idiots sometimes that want to try and tarnish your name or your reputation, or people that you don't see eye to eye with. And the craziest thing is, these are two people. The people that I just don't get along with are actually guys that I can look up to and say they're like my father's age, and they're black men as well, and they're quite successful in their roles, but because of how they go about things, it's just like,
they're overdoing it.
But the thing about it is, what they're doing is, every time if they try to talk bad about me, which is never really the case, it's never actually the case, they always hit a brick wall, because most of the time I'm doing good things for people. So for me, like I said, I don't want to be arrogant about it, but I like to go about it the most humblest way I can.
Nah, that one there has put a mad smile on my face. Because honestly, do you know what it is? Yeah, because as a coach, that's one of my biggest dreams. I'm not even talking about like the trophies or winning stuff. Of course, that's something that I want. but like I really want to have that experience where like 15 years from now, someone's son, or even if it's a player going, nah, Rom, I remember you, you know. Like I would love to be someone's best coach. Do you know what I mean? And I think the way I'm going about it is more treating them as the best human that they can be.
100%.
So just taking away the grass and the cones and the footballs, but actually just knowing that they had someone that they maybe saw a couple hours a week, but took care of them as a human first. I think that's my strategy for having that legacy. But yeah, that's honestly, I wish I could I would end it right there. I really would. That's
literally,
mad.
there's so much more. Like even there's so many there's kids.
That's mad.
That even now professional footballers. Like even the other day, one kid that has been with me for a long time, and he's just like even him. He's appreciative. He always goes, Kev, the day when it comes, you will know about it. Like even and I'm just like, see what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, like he's been coached by professional coaches. Do you see what I mean? And they're hired. These are pro licensed coaches. Do you see what I mean? And they've got bags of experience over me. But it's like I will still take him out and do training sessions with him that affect his game and make him a better player.
Yeah.
And he would definitely vouch for me on this because last season, before he moved to the club that he went to, we spent the summer working on his forward play. And it's crazy because he spent 2 years at an academy and he was never really coached. But in the summer that I worked with him, in the summer that I worked with him, he changed. He became a different player. And it's crazy because I look at the clips that I remember the first season of his clips, and he played against Manchester United, your Man Cities, and all these big clubs, Arsenal and stuff. I think they played like in-house, like behind closed door friendlies. But you're looking at it, and I'm like, you see that? That's my work.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like, again, I've always said, now I'm at that stage now, it's like, I'm going to continue leaving a legacy. And that's why I'm always at Norfolk, because I feel like Norfolk, anybody that goes to Norfolk High School and hear about Brentford, the first person they mention is Kevin. Because they know that's my place now. That's my home. That's my second home now. And a lot of kids can say, like even till now, it's crazy. People that used to come to the session as participants and don't play football anymore, they said the best times of my life was when I was a kid and I was going to kicks with you.
Mental. That is amazing. That is amazing. Because it's like, even though like I'm a sort of host in this conversation, like literally in this whole time, I feel like I'm a viewer, like I'm a learner. Do you know what I mean? Like the same way I hope people are taking notes that when you're watching this, but believe me, I might have a piece of paper in front of me, but I'm really, I really have to take this stuff in because these are the parts of conversations about football that I love. It's not talking about tactics and how, you know, you can operate a 1-4-3-3 against a 1-4-4-2 is really exciting at times, but it's talking about like the finer details of dealing with like humans in the environment of sport and looking at those experiences. Now those are the most beautiful things.
Everybody's a human at the end of the day, and that's how you got to treat them first. And if you're going to treat them like just complete footballers, then you've lost them already.
I agree.
You've got to be able to, as they call it, the FA four corners, you've got to be able to hit that prior to anything. Like,
I agree.
You've got to really sit down and educate these boys before they become anything else. Like, and you've got to understand that some of them are not going to become footballers. Remember, we have in this country, there's that 1% that make it. So what's the other 99 going to do?
99%.
What are they going to do? So you've got to teach them how to become good Samaritans and good people, like for the next generation. So yeah, man. For me, like I said, and I'm 100% with you. Is that when they come through that door, I treat them as any other human being. Then we talk about the football side of things.
No, that's amazing. And it's like, so to sort of wrap it up gradually. So for someone that might be like a young coach and wants to be, you never know, the next Kevin Lema. Like what qualification, like if we go back into the more technical side of things, what qualifications did you have to do? Or like what courses did you have to take part in order to be like professionally accredited to what you can do now?
definitely the level 1, level 2, and UEFA B and UEFA A license and pro license, which is something that these coaches do later on in the years. But definitely the first 3 are the main big ones. There's obviously, I think when I started doing my coaching courses or my badges, there wasn't really the mentoring side of things. Or there's now all these new courses that fit in, so like the youth module. When I did FA 1 level 2, that never existed, but then it became an additional prior to getting onto your UEFA B. You see what I mean? So there's all these little things, and plus I like that because it's what we just said now. There's a 1% chance that a player that comes into you as a footballer will make it. And it could be the same percentage as a coach going from one end to the top. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You look at the badges that they're offering now, it's like they're offering you different roles that are very, very important in the thing. Like, don't get me wrong, there's no FA badge in sleeping, but there are sleeping coaches now. There are set piece coaches now. Do you see what I mean? There are mentors, do you see what I mean, in the clubs now that help people with all these little things. So back then we never used to have that, and I credit to some extent the FA for now producing these type of courses, because that opens up. It says to you, you don't have to come and do your FA level 1 in order to be a successful person within the football industry. You can also do these other courses that allows you to then still communicate with your big name players in a football club. You'll have some sort of influence in their lives. So like one of my friends is what's his role? He's an under 15s coach / 16s coach at Chelsea. But then he also does I think he does the mentoring from the under 23s all the way down, and even hosting them as well. So if they get a trialist into the club, he would host them. You see what I mean?
Wow.
But he's always been about coaching, but he had to go and take all these other roles, or he had to go and do these other courses in order to get the role that he has now. You see what I mean? And I kid you not, he's coached the Mason Mounts, your Tammy Abrahams, your Callum Hudson-Odoi, all these players were in his teams. So, and he's still, like, even now, he's the same as me. Like, when he sees all these boys, the way they hug him, and I've seen it as well. I've seen people like Tammy Abraham go and hug him and call him uncle. Do you see what I mean? He's still young.
Wow.
He's still in his early 30s, but he's left a legacy. And it's going back to, it's like, because of the courses that he's done, that's what's led him to do that and to be able to influence professional athletes at this stage.
That's amazing. And I think, as well as there's one thing I wanted to touch on before we sort of finish. There was like, I know the courses are, of course, they're very key in terms of the professional development. But I think for me, the experience of actually getting in like the coaching hours or the hours within football psychology or the hours within football mentoring, I think those are the more key aspects for me. I think that combined with the courses that you do, like the journey's amazing. Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, we kind of talk about those analogies where, you know, like when you have, you know, like, I don't know if you ever had that where like you are a level 1 coach, but you had thousands of hours locked in or hundreds of hours locked in, and you kind of look at the level 2 or the UEFA B and you go, we're not far.
Do you know what it is? I agree with you, because I was a level 1 coach. I was a level 2 coach. No, I was a level 1 coach for a long time, for a very long time. And it goes back to what I said earlier, what gave me the confidence boost as well. And when you were talking about the evolution of my evolution of coaching, it was like between what they look like when it was 3 years and 6 years. For me, was like, I was a level 1 coach, but coaches were telling me you're coaching like an A license coach. So it goes back to what you were saying. I look at certain courses and I was like so stubborn about it as well. And I'm like, I don't need these badges. I'm going to prove to coaches I don't need these badges in order. But later on, if you want to get into the role that I have now, you've got to make sure you have all these badges ticked off.
Yeah, no, of course. And even now talking about, say, for example, like the leaving behind the legacy.
Yeah.
How does that feel, especially that you are a young black coach, which is something that we don't, let's be honest, we really don't see that often. When we look at a percentage, and I'm talking about just the black group alone, Like, how does that feel?
It's a blessing, and for me, it's it's a blessing to me. But what's even more of a bigger blessing is when I'm with my mum, or I'm with my dad, or I'm with my sister, and even my partner as well. And she was saying it the other day. So I took her to the game. She never really comes to my game. So I took her to the game, to one of my games. So I just went to watch a game, a few players. And like I said, I always talk to her about my football. I always talk to my family about the football. And I'm taking this player to this trial, I'm taking them to that.
Yeah. And
sometimes you've got to prove it to them. But I didn't, that wasn't my intention. I just took them to a match to see what I do and stuff. And for me, what was even more of a blessing, what made me reflect and say, you know what, I'm super proud that I've been so consistent and carried this on, is when they said to me, when we go to these games, you have at least 5 or 6 people coming over to you, and it's just their face when they see you as well. And that for me was like, I won't say I made it because I'm still far from it, but it was like, I'm the man.
I get it. No, I get it. I get it. I do get it. I get it. I think it's that moment of like, when it's a moment of like when a humble person kind of, it's that little victory celebration.
Yeah.
Like, and I think, I definitely get what that means. I haven't had moments like that on that scale, but I know it's like where the graft in silence kind of makes a little bit of noise and you just go, you know what? That was me. I can't hide it anymore.
I can't hide it anymore. There's no hiding anymore. And even she's been encouraging me, and she's been saying to me, look, you just got to keep pushing. She said, like, you're a man with so much leverage. And I'm like, I get it, but I just don't need to be arrogant about it. As I'm going to continue the way I've been in terms of in this football industry has got me it's got me this far, and it's blessed me with like opportunities like this, being interviewed by yourself, and to even be thought of as for Black History Month. For me, that for me was just like, but I'm going to carry on the way I am, because if it's got me to where I am now, if I do it for another 10 years, who knows where it can take me.
No, 100%. And it's like, even like now talking about Black History Month, like, I get it. Like in schools, they will celebrate, you know, the previous Black people that done their thing in this world. But you see in this moment here for Black History Month, I'm not celebrating them. I celebrate people like you, Kevin, because it's like,
I appreciate
honestly, because like as I'm a young man coming up the ladder, I want to look to successful Black people. It's not that other ethnic groups aren't successful. Of course, there are just going to be gems that I'm going to grab. But because I can, like, in this, like, I wouldn't even call this an interview, in this conversation, because I can connect so much with what you're saying and the experiences, it's like, I feel like I kind of feel like I've made it already. Like, I can visualize what me making it looks like. And it's like, because I can celebrate people like you, the steps to go there just feel so much more easier. And it's like the possibility, it doesn't seem like, oh, I'm just a lonely Black man in this world trying to make it in a world that looks like I don't belong in. Do you know what I mean? That path looking like, I see someone that's like, Kevin's done it. And of course he's not, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me, he's not the finished article yet, but he's gone up so many levels. I can do the same.
100%.
You know what I mean?
And that's for me, it's the biggest thing. And I say to any youngster that's going to hopefully watch this, is that it's never going to be easy. There's times where I doubted myself as a coach. I doubted my ability. There's times where I remember I had a season with a bunch of players. Apologies, because let me quickly grab a charger. It's actually on 1%. 2 seconds.
Yeah, sure, no worries. No, that's fine. No worries. We'll keep it rolling.
Location because of my charger.
Nah, man, no worries. We can keep it rolling. That's fine. But I'll ask the question again. So I even forgot what the question was. I'll be so honest.
What was it again? I had it because I had the answer for it as well.
Yeah. We were talking about, I was talking about celebrating you,
Yeah.
and like, oh yes, so you're talking about. So you were saying that like there were difficulties where you doubted yourself.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, touch on that again.
So, like I said, man, there's times where I literally doubted myself as a coach, and I even thought to myself, like, am I really good as people think I am? Am I really that good? Am I, like, what keeps bringing me back? There's all these little things that are going around my mind as well, and it was just like, but again, it's like finding that deeper. You got to understand what your purpose is, and I felt like, again with football, I felt like there's a reason why I stopped playing, and it was would I have been able to influence as many people, have a deeper touch or have that deeper connection with people as a footballer? Because remember, footballers have a connection with the fans, but it's only so much. It's not as deep as it is as a coach. So for me, it was like, God probably told me, you know what? I'm going to take away something that you really want, but I'm going to give you something that's going to be a lot better. You see what I mean? And for me, it was just like, maybe this is the reason why, and I just got to keep going. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. Yeah, like I said, I doubted myself on so many occasions, but I stayed true to what my plan B was and what the man told me.
Yeah.
And I just kept going, man. I literally just kept going. And I thought, nah, there's no reason to stop.
Nah, that's amazing. I think if we were to wrap this up right now, I'd want to ask this question.
Now,
what would you have...
time, even though I've got a barber's appointment in an hour, but it's fine. My barber's already done the way.
Do you know what? No worries.
Yeah, go on.
Do you know what it is, Kevin? I've got a session, in like 30 minutes. And I know that the players are beginning to...
Nah. Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? We definitely have to do a part one. That's definitely...
Yeah, 100%. I'm around, man.
Wherever it happens, we're definitely
yeah,
that part two. And I think if we were to wrap up part one, I'd want to ask, if you were to... You, Kevin, now, 27-year-old Kevin, if you were to go back in time and look at... I wouldn't even say 17-year-old Kevin. I'm talking like 13, 14-year-old Kevin.
Yeah.
What would you tell him?
13-year-old Kevin.
Like, after everything you've been through now.
What would I tell young Kevin at 13? I'm trying to envision what I was doing at 13 as well. That's crazy. Do you know what? I feel like at 13, 14, I was just... I was a bit of a troublemaker. It will come under the word stay a lot more focused. Focus would definitely be the word, because I got swayed a bit a few times. I got in trouble with the police and stuff. I got swayed a bit, but then it was like, it was literally just staying focused. But I was quite... I think it's literally just stay focused on what God's blessed you with. Because again, I was a talented footballer. I was a very, very talented footballer. I had a very good reputation in school, outside of school. So for me, it was staying a lot more focused. The hours that I spent messing around, playing knockdown ginger and all that stuff, could I have been practicing a lot more on my football? Could that have rounded up to the so-called 10,000 hours that people like to say that equals you to expert level or professional level? Yeah. Could that have been the case? Maybe. But a 13-year-old me would have been literally stay focused on what you've been blessed with. And that's literally it. But no. Between then and that, even when I think I became super mature at 14. So year 8, 12 to 13. Year 9 is 13, 14. No. 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, when I got into year 10, I became a super mature kid. And the teachers were backing. Like between year 8 and year 9, I was trouble. Year 10, year 11, I was the most focused kid. I thought
Wow.
that's what opened up so many doors, and even the opportunity that I got with Inter Milan as well was phenomenal. Yeah.
You talk about Inter Milan now. At the end, this is why we need a part two.
Even
My goodness.
we'll go into that at part two. But yeah, I think again, that's why I'm saying that my advice to a 13-year-old Kev was to stay focused, because the moment I became a lot more focused, a lot more doors opened for me. And again, that's my biggest example. Oh, sugar. So I got to hang up a player. That's a player just calling me now.
He's a busy man, people. He's a busy man.
But literally, oh, sugar, he's going to feel a bit harsh. But he's going to, I've had good reviews about him. So he went on trial. I actually called up a club for him Wednesday, because they're actively looking for a goalkeeper. And he went in, and they said, and the first team goalkeeper coach actually called me. And I've never spoken to him before. He goes, Kev, where's this goalkeeper come from? We want him back in on Friday. So he's probably calling me to tell me how well he did. Because, yeah, he done really well, apparently. But, yeah, no, going back to what I was saying, that's the reason why I've stuck to saying focus, because the opportunities that I got when I became super focused from year 10 to 11 was phenomenal. I had chances when I was going up and playing against Blackburn Rovers. I was playing against all sorts of clubs. And then the massive breakthrough was the Inter Milan program that I went on. And that for me, that's what kind of, again, switched it a lot more to becoming a very talented footballer, but then also maybe a very talented coach that helps young players.
I think, with that one there, we're going to touch on that in part two. But I think, honestly, though, to wrap this up, I have to thank you. I can't think of a word or words to say how grateful I am to be part of listening to your story.
No,
you know what I mean? Because before this, of course, we knew each other a little bit before this, but before this, it was always third person, from Alfred, for example, who we both know very well. But to
Alfred's
hear it,
a legend. For anybody that doesn't know Alfred, the funny thing, do you know what's crazy? Alfred will tell you, and if he's here listening, he knows that I twisted them up a few times in futsal. But Alfred, don't get me wrong, Alfred was so even that time, when I used to do coaching, come from Luton to Kicks, after Kicks on a Thursday, there used to be a futsal league, which was run by Middlesex, and a guy called Gavin that used to work for Nike. And I think Alfred's team used to murder it. They were called Sport Benfica, I think.
Yep.
His team,
I've heard all the stories, man.
Legend. Alfred was no nonsense defender. Oh my days. And he used to wear his little headband like he was a basketball player as well.
Do you know what it is? I've seen him play. Do you know what it is? He looks so lazy when he's not about to give you that crunching tackle. When he tackles, I see it. Feel it. I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want it.
Alfred's a legend. He's a legend.
I think with Alfred, I kind of have to describe him. He's like a gatekeeper. He's got the keys to open so many doors. And once you get into contact with someone like Alfred, the possibilities are endless. You know what I mean? I feel like someone like him deserves so much more.
Exactly.
Much more.
But he's like me though. He's humble about it. He's got leverage. The man's got leverage, but we stay humble about it. We just go about our business, and it's like we're able to speak so highly of Alfred. You see what I mean? The same way people can speak so highly of me and yourself as well. So it's like we're so humble in what we do, and sometimes that's the greatest thing to be.
Yeah. No, 100%. I agree. But man, look, we gotta end it there. To all the viewers that are watching, listen, I hope if you didn't take anything from that, get out of my face. It's so real. Because the man dropped about 1 million gems. I hope you at least picked up one. Now, honestly, Kevin, that was amazing. All I can say to the people is stay tuned for part two. But no, honestly, that was amazing. That was brilliant. Like, and as well, I know you're a busy man. Like, I've tried to get through to you on other occasions and I can't. So, like, to take out this past, 2 hours is, honestly, forever grateful. Forever grateful, man. That was amazing. But yeah, honestly, viewers, I hope you enjoyed. As well as we're doing this Get Into series, stay tuned for the other topics that we touch on. And we hope to see you soon.